The date is September 13, 2005. World of Warcraft is rapidly becoming the largest virtual continent on Earth, boasting millions of active players. On this day, Blizzard releases patch 1.7.0, opening the gates to a brand new high-level dungeon, Zul'Gurub. Waiting at the end of this dungeon was the final boss, a giant winged serpent god named Hakkar the Soulflayer.
Hakkar was incredibly difficult to defeat, largely because of a specific spell he would cast on players called Corrupted Blood. Here is how the digital pathogen worked. Hakkar would infect a player with corrupted blood. The symptom: the spell rapidly drained the player's health over time. The transmission: the spell was highly contagious. Any player standing near the infected player would immediately catch it. The game design is intended for this debuff to be a localized, temporary challenge. You catch it, you lose some health, you spread out from your teammates, the fight ends and the disease disappears. It was physically impossible to carry the disease out of the dungeon. Or at least it should have been. Programmers are smart, but players are endlessly creative. Some players belong to a class called Hunters, which allowed them to tame and summon virtual pets to fight alongside them. During the battle with Hakkar, these pets would catch corrupted blood. If the hunter's pet was close to dying, the player would dismiss the pet, sending it into a state of digital stasis, effectively freezing it in time. When the players finished the dungeon, they teleported back to the capital cities, Ironforge and Orgrimmar, bustling, densely packed metropolises filled with thousands of players, trading, chatting and organising quests.
Then, the hunters re-summoned their pets. The pets spawned back into reality. But because they had been frozen in stasis, the game's code didn't realise they had left the dungeon. The pets were still infected with corrupted blood. Within seconds, the plague jumped from the pets to the hunters. From the hunters, it jumped to the players standing next to them. From those players, it jumped to the non-playable characters, NPCs, running the shops. Because NPCs had infinite health, they couldn't die. They became asymptomatic carriers, permanently infected, instantly transmitting the disease to anyone who walked into their store. The Great Pandemic of Azeroth. What followed was apocalyptic. Low-level characters, who didn't have the massive health pools of the top-tier players, died instantly upon contracting the disease.
Could a plague made of pure mathematics teach us anything about real human flesh and blood? In 2005, scientists were handed a flawless, real-time simulation of a global pandemic. And it didn't come from a supercomputer at the CDC, it came from World of Warcraft. To understand how a video game caught the attention of the FBI and the world's leading epidemiologists, we first have to understand how we normally predict the apocalypse. The mathematics of doom. When epidemiologists want to model the spread of a disease, they don't just guess, they use mathematics. Specifically, they rely on complex algorithms, the most famous of which is the SIR model. The SIR model divides a population into three distinct categories. S, susceptible, people who can catch the disease. I, infectious, people who have it and can spread it. R, recovered, people who have had it and are now immune or, well, dead. We can express the flow of individuals between these categories using a set of differential equations. Here, beta represents the infection rate and gamma represents the recovery rate.
If you know these numbers, you can predict exactly how a virus will tear through a city. But there is a massive, glaring problem with the SIR model. It assumes that humans are like gas molecules bouncing around in a closed container. It assumes we mix perfectly and randomly. It assumes that when a deadly plague breaks out, humans will behave logically, but we don't. The streets of Ironforge became carpeted with skeletons. Players logging into the game for a relaxing evening were instantly vaporised in a cloud of red mist the second they spawned. Blizzard programmers scrambled. They tried to initiate digital quarantines, ordering players to stay away from the capital cities. But remember the SIR model? Remember how it assumes people behave logically? This is where the math broke down and human psychology took over. In a textbook simulation, players would recognise the danger and avoid the cities.
But in Azeroth, researchers observed wildly divergent, deeply human behaviours that no computer algorithm could have ever predicted. 1. The first responders, altruism. Players with healing abilities didn't run away. Instead, they actively rushed into the infected zones. They formed massive makeshift triage centers, constantly casting healing spells on infected players to keep them alive long enough for the debuff to wear off. They risked their own virtual lives entirely unprompted to help strangers. Displacement. Panicked players ran from the cities, migrating to the empty digital countryside. But just like in the real-world Black Death or the 1918 influenza, these fleeing refugees unknowingly carried the disease with them. They brought the plague to small villages and outposts, creating localized outbreaks across the entire continent. Some players simply didn't read the forums or the server warnings. They saw the pile of bones in the city square and, driven by human curiosity, walked right into the middle of the infection zone just to see what was going on. Curiosity, it turns out, is a major vector for disease transmission. Malice. This is the element that truly shocked researchers. Some high-level players, realizing they had enough health to survive the plague for a few minutes, began intentionally contracting corrupted blood.
They would then use magical items to teleport themselves into the most densely populated areas they could find, deliberately trying to kill as many innocent players as possible. They were suicide bombers of disease. In the real world, this malice is incredibly rare, but the anonymity of the internet, combined with the lack of real-world physical consequences, completely uninhibited the human id. It created a flawless, horrifying snapshot of human behaviour under the threat of a pandemic. This needed further study. In March 2007, an Israeli epidemiologist named Randy Balasa published an article in the journal Epidemiology urging the scientific community to study the corrupted blood incident. Shortly after, Dr. Nina Pfefferman from Tufts University published a comprehensive study in the Lancet Infectious Diseases. Pfefferman realised something profound. World of Warcraft was not just a game, it was a network of millions of real human brains making rapid, high-stakes decisions under immense stress. Yes, the avatars were made of pixels, but the time, energy and emotional investment players had in their characters were entirely real. The fear of losing progress, the desire to help friends, the twisted amusement of causing chaos, these were entirely authentic human emotions. The FBI and Homeland Security agencies even reached out to academics regarding the incident.
Why? Because the bioterrorists in Azeroth provided a terrifying blueprint for how malicious actors might behave during a real-world biological attack. The game had organically generated a scenario that Homeland Security had struggled for years to model. We often think of the digital world and the physical world as two separate realms, a dualism. There is real life, and then there is the simulation. But where do we draw the line? If a digital virus causes real human panic, real human altruism, and leads to changes in real-world mathematical models, is it truly just a simulation? Or is the internet simply a new dimension of human geography? We are biological creatures. We are susceptible to biological viruses. But the corrupted blood incident proved that you don't need a physical body to catch a disease. You don't need real blood to shed it. Behaviour is contagious, panic is a pathogen, and human nature, whether it is cloaked in skin or rendered in pixels, remains remarkably, beautifully, and terrifyingly constant. Luckily, Blizzard eventually had to perform hard resets on their servers, rewriting the code to make pets immune to corrupted blood, finally ending the plague. But the real world was forever changed by the incident.
Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by, and catch you in the next one.